Hey, hello everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Max on Color. And today, you are in for a treat because we have Max on Color Halloween special. Right. How are you, Diego?
I'm fine, Max. What about you? I'm really excited about Halloween.
I know, right? Have you bought all the sweets and everything? Have you prepared?
Yeah, I'm already scary about it. I'm already scary. But
That's
what I
really
like more
cool.
is to get some candies in Halloween. I love cheap candies.
Yeah, that's what make our Halloween specials, the cheap candies. No, on top of that, on top of the cheap candies, let me do the special housekeeping for today. Well, by special, it's just, showing you links and where to get the free t-shirt and so on and so forth. Yeah, let me share my screen. Right, if you go to maxon.net/events, you'll be able to see all the events that we are hosting, including today's Halloween special with Max on Colors. And next Friday, tomorrow, we'll have another episode of VFX and Chill. So make sure to tune in with Hashi and Seth. And next Monday, there will be the last, the last episode. No, the penultimate episode of Demystifying Post-Productions on sculpting. So if you really want to learn or really want to level up your skills on sculpting with ZBrush, don't forget to attend the Demystifying Post-Productions webinar next Monday. And next Thursday, there is also Ask the Trainer with the focus on animation. So if you're really curious about animations, make sure to join the Ask the Trainer sessions on Thursday next week. And like usual, we are offering you the free t-shirt. If you haven't got your free t-shirt, and make sure you go to this link, which I will copy and paste to the chat. If the chat is working, wait a second. So go on to the chat and then use the link and make sure to use the code Spooky Sculpts, if I'm not mistaken. Where is the code? Hold on a second. Make sure to use the code Spooky Sculpts, the one that you can see on your screen, to enter the shop and get your free t-shirt. And let me go back sharing my screen. And also, if you missed the last episode of Max on Color or any other webinar that hosted by Max on Training Team, you can always go to our YouTube channel. It's Max on Training Team, and under the playlist, you can see all the webinars that were recorded, and you can catch up if you want to. And yeah. I think that's the housekeeping for today. And today we are going to show you some tips and tricks on, making things looks more scary and more, horror-ish. But whenever we want to learn about vocabulary, normally you go and check Merriam-Webster's, right? If you want to learn new vocabulary. But in my opinion, if you want to learn new vocabulary about horror, I think it's better to check out and to learn more with our guest today, Mariam Drager. Mariam, welcome to the show.
Hello, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. Hey there.
Hello.
Hey.
And yeah, Mariam is a cross media producer specialized in horror movie and horror genre. Sorry. And could you talk about that a little bit, Mariam?
Yeah, so I wouldn't even know where to start because horror as a genre is so vast. And what's amazing is that what drives horror is the community. It's one of those three genres where there's a very loyal fan base. If you include fantasy and sci-fi, horror is one of the big three. And because it's community driven, you kind of break down the barriers when it comes to collaborating and creating content and art between different forms of media and different pockets of the industry. And that's something that I've specialized in. The cross-media aspect is really what I do when I take an original IP, whether, I've developed it with a team myself or someone else comes to me with their IP. And I try to figure out, okay, well, how can we release this on various platforms through various forms of media to maximize the benefit of this IP and make sure the people who are yet to become fans are exposed to this idea, this story, these characters, and because I've worked in so many different industries, I've decided to specialize on the genre, on the storytelling techniques and art form behind horror itself, and therefore work with different forms of media. So that's basically what I do as a producer. I like to say that a big part of my job is surrounding myself with actually skilled people and being the big mouth and the face of a project, but to coordinate the funding, to coordinate the teams, to bring people together. I'm a connector, if you will. And I'm very passionate about the spooky really cool. And strange.
And if we read carefully in your biopic, it's like I read that you are also producing your own video games, right? You have a productions company running as well, Spoondrift, if I'm not mistaken.
That's it, Spoondrift Games, and so we're currently working on a very big original game that's going to feature some interesting people, both as voice actors. We've got Jen and Sylvia Soska, who are probably the most famous female directors in the horror genre, wow. And we have Thomas Middleditch, who is an Emmy-nominated comedian. And we really want to get the balance between, what's funny and what's, scary. And so that's in production at the moment. But we also have a VR department, and we do a lot of consultation work. So, other projects as well, if they want a, digital product to their promotion campaign or their marketing campaign, or if they want to do something similar themselves and they kind of just want some advice and some consultation or to be connected to certain people, that's what we do. So that's definitely the digital side and the very modern side of horror, and it very much marries into the indie film scene and music and a little bit of wrestling as well in our marketing campaign. So we do a little bit of everything.
So you can say that you are a completely fan, and now you are like a professional doing what you like more. That is some horror and that, yeah?
Yeah. I usually I don't like using the word fan because, are we really fanatic about something? But I'd say when it comes to horror, it's an unhealthy obsession.
It's unhealthy obsession. That's a really good way to put it. Yeah.
No, it's a very healthy obsession, and I can explain why. But, I love horror, and the thing is, I obviously am the type of person who said, I want to do something that moves me, that feels like it matters, right? So otherwise I never would have gone into the entertainment industry in the first place. Yeah. But then as I was in the entertainment industry and the media content, I was shimming around between different pockets, different industries. And I realized that, okay, well, I have the skill set to work in this industry. I know I'm good at it and I do enjoy it. But what is it that I really, burn for? And I think it took me quite a few years of working in the industry as well before I realized that horror is its own pocket of the industry, that I can actually work in horror. I can actually specialize in horror. And then I think, based on my experiences up to that point and, the skills and the contacts I had, I said, I think I'm going to come up with a title for for my job first.
Nice.
And I'm just going to become that because I know exactly, I came to a point in my career and I did have to do like try so many projects and work for so many people. And, you know, I did need that experience, but I got to a point where I realized I know exactly what I want to be. I want to be a cross-media horror producer, and I'm just going to go out and do that now. And
Oh wow, that's
4
really
years
cool.
ago, that's what I did, and since then, that's what I've been specializing in.
And
That's awesome.
probably based on your story, if a new, like a, how do you call it, if a student, for example, freshly graduate, and he's a really big horror fan and want to make a move into the industry and want to make a career in horror genre, do you have any advice for people who want to getting into the industry?
So I think my biggest piece of advice, if you are a content creator, is to always be creating content, always listen to everyone's feedback. And just because you know now that all you want to do is horror doesn't mean that's all you should do from the beginning. Because what makes horror so amazing is the layers and the facets that you don't really understand until you've understood what it's like to do a rom-com, what it's like to do a drama, what it's like to do a sci-fi or fantasy. You, as a horror fan, because the subject matter is usually humans, you know, it's a story that's being told about people, you have to be open-minded to everything and learn and just take it in like a sponge. And regardless of what people say, always listen. You know, you don't have to follow what they say necessarily, but sit there and listen. Don't act like you know it all, and take it all in, and figure out then how you will apply your specific life story, your specific skill set, your specific resume to exactly what you want to do when you do end up in horror. And when you do get there, it's usually because you've met other horror fans who also work in the industry and you want to do a project together. And chances are it's going to start as an indie project. So no budget, but everyone comes with their time and their gear and hopefully a good story, because that is the core of any good film. It has to be a good story. And then you just make it, and you make a short film, maybe you make another short film, eventually you make a feature. So it's not magic in the sense that you can't just hop from A to B, even if you already know that that's what you love. It's a gradual process, but therefore there is a formula to it. And ultimately, it's the same formula as any filmmaker would probably pursue. But, you know, the thing with horror is that it is something that people tend to feel a lot more emotional about. If you are not crazy about horror, but you think that that's what sells and it's a buzzword and you're like, I'm going to jump on that trend wagon because everyone starts by making a horror film, don't make a horror film because it won't feel genuine. And those who do love horror, they will feel it. It does make a difference. So there's some advice for people who don't love horror. Yeah, or, you know, but then you have to love the horror comedy, and that's great.
Yeah, like my favorite is like What We Do in the Shadows. That's amazing.
Amazing. There's so many fantastic horror comedies, and yeah, but you need to live a little and just experience before you actually end up where you do. But yeah, just you know, go to the people who love what you love. Go down the path of least resistance, because sometimes if it feels easier but it doesn't look like a shortcut, then that's where you're supposed to be going, you know. Really so I don't know. There's a lot I can say generally about filmmaking and horror, but I think if you love horror, you'll end up there eventually anyway.
Awesome. That's a really nice piece of advice. Thank you very much for sharing with us, Mariam. And one more thing about horror, because today we have like a small edit that we want to make it look like a horror movie and want to be able to sell it as a horror look. And we want to talk to you a little bit about what makes horror horror. What makes the aesthetics of horror, and what makes horror is so exciting. Well, I mean, I could debate. I can you know, argue that, you know, horror movie is like it's very interactive in my opinion. It is it is not a movie that that asks the audience to just sit back and relax. We'll take it from here. It plays with you, and it weaponizes a lot of cinematography tricks. Like, for example, our mind, normally we love to like complete things. And then when there is a scene, somebody standing out of the window, and then the next cut is somebody lying on the floor, those whole process, it affects us. Right? It's similar to like what the Kuleshov effects, the montage, the same neutral expressions of a person, and then you have another image on top of that, and then you can interpret that. It's so great in that regards. And on your opinion, what makes horror is like special?
So there's so many questions wrapped up in the questions that you just asked, and it's a very complex answer. And I'm just going to pick one way to get in there. So first of all, you need to break down the various emotional experiences that you can go through when you're watching a horror film. Now, obviously, horror is the obvious, emotion, but there's also other nuances like dread, disgust, unease. Generally, when you're watching a horror film, you're telling the filmmaker, I am not only open to feeling whatever you want me to feel, but I actually expect you to make me feel something. And we're always focused on the fear, but effectively it can take you in any direction, really. Horror films often try to convey certain emotions because you can only be afraid of something if it means enough to you. So you're afraid of losing it, you're afraid of ruining it, whatever it is, it has to be meaningful to you. And so a lot of horror films are either about, on the one hand, we have escapism, but on the other hand, we have more like a realism where something, is closer to reality or is maybe an artistic depiction of a very real topic, whereas escapism is trying to take you to a completely different world. Realism is kind of taking you to that. And then even within realism, are we trying to understand someone else's perspective? So for example, if the film is about a single father who is trying to raise his kid and he's afraid for the safety of his child, that's not something I personally understand because I'm not in that position, but this film may show me what it feels like to be in that position. At the same time, it could be your own perspective. So what if I was a single father with a young child? I would then see this and say, oh, I'm not the only one who experiences this. I am part of a community. I feel this as well. Yeah. So it's very nuanced. And then if we strip all that down and we kind of look at the general experience of a horror film, I think something that we all want to see in a horror film, regardless of whether it's a slasher movie or something paranormal, is something feeling creepy or a sense of unease at a certain moment, whether it actually resolves in something cathartic like a big bang, or it actually just stays and lingers, and then the movie's over and you feel unsatisfied, depending on where you go. And that sense of unease, that sense of creepiness, it comes from a situation that doesn't seem right, but there's no obvious threat. So, for example, if you see, a bedroom with like a clown doll in it, some people will look at that and say, ooh, that clown doll in my bedroom, that's super creepy. But it's not an actual threat. You don't actually think that clown doll is going to attack you, but it doesn't seem right. That clown doll, you don't usually have a clown doll in your bedroom, so it doesn't seem right. And our brain doesn't know how to process that information. Yeah. And what we then feel is creeped out. So when you're doing a horror film and you want to create a scene where someone is watching something and feels dread, so we're anticipating that something might go wrong, that's how you create it. You take something that isn't quite normal, but it doesn't seem dangerous yet. And you can do that in many, many ways. And if we then look at, you know, editing and color grading and the aesthetic that you are picking up on, you can do that very, very well with cinematography and color. Color palettes are a really important thing when it comes to horror films, because you can play with it in the one or the other extreme or direction. And the fact that it doesn't look like a normal set of colors, that can be enough for our brain to register the situation in a way that makes us feel uneasy.
Creating
a room is not
world,
supposed
right?
to look. Yeah, you're creating a world. The world is not supposed to look blue, green. Like, what the hell is going on? And you know, when you make a horror film, every aspect of the story, the dialogues, the color, the cuts, you know, everything you do, the camera work, has to play into that unease, because it'll help you build up the emotions that you then need to take the audience and really do whatever you want with them. So I hope I answered your question.
That's a very thorough answer. Go on, Diego.
Yeah, I have a question about it. Where do you like more to watch horror movies? Cinema, cell phone, TV?
Okay, so it depends.
I like to watch horror film on my cell phone under my blanket.
Yeah, with your teddy bear and a flashlight. No, I mean, there are especially horror films that are about technology we have at home. So computers or cell phones are super fun to watch on your computer or your cell phone, because you realize, oh, the bad guy in this movie is what I'm using right now. So is something going to happen? It kind of reminds me of a film from Japan that came out around the year 2000 called Pulse. And I think the Japanese name was like Cairo or something. Yeah, okay. Pulse. Very retro, and the whole so it's about a website that people go to and suddenly they see footage of themselves in the room, but it's dark and pixelated, and then you know, people are cursed and then they die. It's got a very famous cinematography scene where, you know, a ghost is walking towards someone and it looks like slow motion, but they actually got a professional dancer to like move in a weird way. And you know, speaking of creepy and uneasy, you know, this is the film for that scene. But the film was created because people were afraid of technology. People were afraid of computers and, you know, what computers were capable of. So watching a film like that on a computer is, you know, it's the full experience. You know, you're being a part of it. And also films like the short film, but I think it's almost an hour, that came out, I think 2 years ago, called Host, which is about a Skype session gone wrong. Fantastic. Watch that on your computer by all means.
So right, there you go, Diego. That's your homework there.
Now I got to get it about this session. Because
this session might actually, could you imagine if this live stream was actually a horror film and the audience didn't know? Oh my God.
Someone appears.
Speaking of this session,
movie theaters, I just want to say movie theaters are the best place to watch a horror film. And that's what I was going.
Plus one on that.
Design is nice.
Plus one on that. Speaking of these sessions, I prepared a very short edit. Let's watch it. I prepared a very short edit. I'm not an editor. Please forgive my bad editing here. But you know, the idea is that it's a clips that coming from all different cameras. The idea here is like how do we elevate this cuts, this short edit, and make it look like a favorite horror movie of your choice. And I think we will try to do that, and while doing that, we really hope that you can pick up some techniques that you can do in your next project when you have any horror movie project to grade, right? And when talking to Mariam, she recommended us, both me and Diego, two really nice piece of horror film to base your look on. And those two movies are, what are they, Mariam? The 30 Days of Night?
30 Days of Night and Censor.
And Censor. And yeah, I think Diego will try to do the Censor look on that. Let us watch the, how do you call it, the trailer of the 30 Days of Night, if I'm not mistaken. Let me share my screen. Wait a second. Let me share my screen. There you go. So there is like this amazing website called Film Grab. It's a free website. You can access it on your end. It's film-grab.com, and you can just type in the title of the movie that you want to search. And I happened to stumble upon some reference image from 30 Days of Night. And I mean, first when I saw it from my through my eyes, I thought it's like, okay, it's a very contrasty piece. Probably it is printed on film, and it seems like you can really see that there's like a very silvery stuff on the skin tone. Probably my best bet is that it was going through the bleach bypass process, where you know, when doing a photochemical process, there are different chemical baths, and one of the bath is to strip all the silver halide and then change it with how do you call it, trade it with a color dye. And then by skipping that process, you'll get like a more contrast, less saturated, and more silvery look on the skin tone, or something like this. But what I didn't realize is that Mariam pointed me that 30 Days of Night is actually based on a very popular graphic novel. And that graphic novel is written by Ben Temple-Smith. And that's actually...
Illustrated by Ben Temple-Smith.
Sorry, illustrated by Ben Temple-Smith. And if you check like one of the image, you can really see that, yeah, the color palette, the majority of it is like this pale blue and very muted dark green in the background, and there's like highlight, like a red highlight color. So it's like probably you know, the majority, the big how do you call it, the majority of the color probably like this pale blue, the dark green, and a little bit 10% of like this red highlights. And upon
but
doing
some
that,
points are like a scary color. It's like desaturated color, blue desaturated, green desaturated are like scary colors, horror colors.
Exactly. And if you really see it here, they try to like milk that color palette to the good use. I mean, look at like the really nasty blood color and all the nuance muted green and very cool shadow. And what's nice is that all of the process, the filming, I mean, the post process of this is well documented in IMDb as well. So if we go to IMDb and search for 30 Days of Night, it is very well documented that the film, it was shot in Kodak Vision 2 200T 5217, and then it is printed on Kodak Vision's 2383, like the famous print film 2383, right? And I think having this information, we can try to, you know, push our shot a little bit to that directions, right? And here I have my Resolve running, and before doing that, I mean, I play around with it a little bit previously, and I think this is like the look that I came up with, but without knowing that it is actually based on a graphic novel, and then the major color palette is pale blue, dark green, and red. So I think it's yeah, okay, it's in the ballpark, but we can tweak it further. And I hope in the next couple of minutes, I'll be able to show you the process. Right. So let's jump back
Looks
to
nice.
Resolve. Thanks, Diego.
Looks really nice.
Yeah, I think you're already really close. I think it looks great.
So
yeah.
If I can break down my process, I mean, I group all the clips in Resolve so that we unlock 2 more categories: the post clip and then the pre-clip. And the big, how do you call it? The big deal of it is that it is printed on film. I'm using Magic Bullet Looks, and in Magic Bullet Looks, I use like a film print and film negative, and then also in between I do a print bleach bypass, and to soften the black, I'm using the Telecine Net tool. And instead of me talking about it, let's do the actual look. Let's try to push it into that direction, right? So here we only have like 4 different clips. Perhaps it's faster when we only have like a small clips like this. Yeah, what I want to do first is that create the overall look, and let me reset that. Otherwise, it will feel like a little bit like cheating, isn't it?
I will do that later. Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay. So we have this clip, and I want first to develop my look using Magic Bullet Look, and by typing in look into the OFX and then applying it to your node, you can press edit look to launch Magic Bullet Look. First, before showing you this, hold on. Before showing you that, probably I think it's best to show you the project settings. In the project settings, I am using the ACES CCT color management framework. It means that doesn't matter what camera it is, I'm mapping it into ACES CCT working space, and then from that I'm targeting the Rec 709, our display space, as a output transform. And to do that, under the color science, you can just select ACES CCT. I'm using the ACES 1.3, the newest versions. I am selecting the reference gamut compress, and also I use the color space grading aware tools, and that's literally it. And make sure if you're using any LUT to switch from trilinear into tetrahedral, and that's literally what I did on the project settings. I don't know what's happening here. Let me restart.
Maybe something horror happened.
Maybe something horror happens. Exactly.
Boo, the cursed call.
The first thing happening is that. Oh, okay. Right. Let me launch Magic Bullet Looks. We're there without restarting. That's nice. So we are in ACES pipeline at the moment, right? So what I want to do is that I want to set Magic Bullet Looks to work in ACES pipeline, and I can just select Open Colorayo -ACES in the mode, and I'll tag it as ACES CCT as input, and same as output. And I want to preview it in Rec 709. So what I'm gonna do is that we know that it is printed on 2383, right? But I feel like with the very basic setting, it looks like it's a little bit too warm to my taste, and we can just like drop down the color temperature a little bit, and then we can shift the tint more towards green, and that's literally what I'm gonna do. And I'm going to reduce the amount of grain to just 10%. And since we are at the back, since we are at the timeline level, I want to create, I want to soften the black as well. And to soften the black, there is like this tool in Magic Bullet Looks called the Telecine Net. And what it do is that it takes your black area, your shadows, and then it just soften it and create a bloom effect on that area. Maybe just around 50. So I set the strength to just around 60%. And since I'm like tackling the black, and there's a exposure compensations control here that you can play around. So I just want to compensate my exposure to just 0.5. And very quick, we can get from there to here just very quickly. So I can just confirm that. And in my pre-clip, means like in the very front end of the clip, I can also drop in magic bullet looks as well there. And I can do the film negative emulations by using the film negative tools. Here, the same, I'll set it to aestheticity, same like before. And in the tools, I'll just drop the film negative. If you remember carefully previously, it was shot with Kodak Vision 2 5217, but and 200T, right? Means that it is balanced for 200 tungsten light. But we don't have it here, so instead of using the daylight versions, let's just use the basic 5218 Vision 2 500T. And same as before, we can just push the temperature down a little bit and reduce the tint and reduce the amount of grain. So I'll just set the grain to 10. And then perhaps, because it was shot in film, perhaps I want to drop the halations effects as well, because it's just like one effect that always happens when you're shooting on film. And on top of that, if I want to, I can also soften my clip a little bit by putting the optical diffusion filter before the film negative and set it to just glimmer glass. And if I want to, since we see that the look itself of the 30 days of night, it's more like a day for night type of looks. So we probably want to soften it a little bit and fill the frame with a lot of haze probably. And here there's a very neat presets called Cool Haze. Let me just use that and confirm. Uh-oh, what's happening? So very quickly, a
ghost. Something happened.
Yeah, let me just restart my let me just restart my results.
It's gonna be my fault.
It's you. You bring some energies or something.
You jinxed it.
I'm just bringing some spirits into this call that feel like they need to get involved.
Yeah, but to talk about the process, Mariam, it's just like I try to emulate the look as if the digital clip was shot with a film. So it has all the color density, it has all the contrast, similar when you are acquiring the footage with film. So there you go. Very quickly, I am going from here to there, and if we wipe it to the reference image, you can really see that it's not quite there. It's not quite there yet. I'm sorry, like there. It's not quite there yet. I mean, you can really see that it's really greenish.
No, it's matrix. It is
matrix now.
Very matrix.
So what am I doing here? Right. Okay. First, the thing that I want to do is that let me just create another node. So I want to tackle the contrast and exposure level. So first, probably we need to drop down the exposure, because it more like, you know, the day for night type of look. I should have done this earlier in this node, but not here. So in the first node, I'll do my exposure adjustment, and in the second node, I'll do my contrast adjustment. Perhaps let me change the pivot to 0.4 and reduce the contrast like quite heavily, maybe something like that, and drop the exposure further. Right. I mean, contrast wise, if we check like we're closer. If we're just looking for the contrast, I mean, right? And now we want to tackle the balance. And let's name it. Let's name it. This is the exposure. And the second one is the contrast. And the third node will be the balance. And we can use the color balance control here just by using offset. So I just want to reduce the amount of green that we see in the clip. Maybe I can just drop my blue a little bit and pump up some red, because I can really see that the red is like really missing from the scope. Maybe something around there. And perhaps introduce the blue a little bit more. And like very quickly, it can, we went from here to there. And if we wipe it, it's closer, but it's not there yet. Maybe I should add some more red here, just something like that. And perhaps we can use the chromatic adaptations to help us further with these operations. So what I'm doing is that I'm using chromatic adaptations, and I'm setting it as if the clip was shot in the 65,000 Kelvin, and then it is remapped into 65,000 Kelvin. So I'm gonna get a different effect by changing my target illuminant. You can see it quickly after this. So what I'm gonna do is just change the color space and gamma into ACES CCT, and now I can make the image slightly cooler just by dragging the Kelvin up, and change the tint of the image. Maybe add more magenta, more on the image, to have some effect that looks like that. So we went from here to there rather quickly. So if we how do you call it, wipe it to the reference image, you can really see that we are in the ballpark already, right? And what do you think, Mariam?
I think it's really good. I mean, to look back at the source material, both in the film and the graphic novel, you really hit the nail on the head when you were saying, yeah, there's like a silver gray, a shimmer to it. You know, we're looking at the blues, we're looking at the greens, but then the red is supposed to be accentuated in certain parts to really underline that threat. Something that you didn't speak about, but you are automatically doing in your work is, if you look at the original source material, it takes place in a small town in a snowy tundra, and both the graphic novel and the film, they tend to blur the backgrounds and have objects that are further away kind of disappear into fog or the clouds or the distance, because it needs to feel like, you know, we're in the middle of nowhere and there's a vastness and we can't see. So we feel more threatened because it's all kind of disappearing. And that's something you're doing by, you know, the images you're using now. It's a very different environment, so it's harder to get that feel, but you're having the background objects and setting kind of blur into each other by softening a lot of the colors and softening a lot of the textures, and you're having that bleeding into each other effect, which kind of makes the person, the object in the focus, seem more isolated and detached from the background. So I think it's great. You know, I think you're really hitting the nail on the head with this. It's a very distinct kind of look, and it's very spooky and aggressive, despite feeling, you know, like it's vast and empty. It's a very interesting combination.
Thank you. I think if you see me, like, you probably see me doing something before while you're talking. I think I did add some more tools in my look, and that is Bleach Bypass. And I forgot to do that, Diego. Shame on me. So I just add Bleach Bypass to add like those silvery look on the how do you call it, on the image. Oh no, not again. Right. And we can also what we can do here, we can create like even further, Mariam, since you are mentioning that there's a separations from the background. The big thing that I noticed here, I can probably use the help of vignette probably, and it's just to, you know, focus the eyes of the audience towards the most important part of the screen, that is the subject itself. So I'm just creating a power window here. So I have a parallel nodes dedicated to my secondary adjustments. So the first node, this first 4 nodes are just literally the primaries adjustment, everything that you know, global adjustment without targeting a specific area. And in this node, I can like use this each of this node to target a very specific area. So for example, when I want to create a vignette, I can just draw a window, and then I'll just reduce the exposure around the frame, at the edges of the frame. And what I can do, I can also drop the midtone details. That is to, you know, just to blur the edges just a little bit. So if I do it like a very obnoxiously, you can already see that, you know, it goes from there to there, like heavily blur out the background. But I don't want to do that. Probably just around 50%. Okay, so I think that's a really quick how do you call it, look that I
really nice.
And
Very cool.
Since I'm creating the look in the timeline level, and it affects all the other images. So what I'm gonna do with this second clip to balance to this image, I can just copy the adjustment and then, you know, tweak the details if it's needed.
Very cool.
And yeah, Diego, what do you think?
Yeah, but I mean, for example, Mariam will say something about the snow, like, I don't know, most of the scenarios of the movies are snow. So sometimes when I have this kind of reference and then I have something completely different, I say, okay, it will not be the same.
Yes,
it will not, I
definitely.
mean, art is so important, and you said it before, Mariam. Art department is doing a lot of things of the color. So in this case, for example, probably will not look the same, but it's because, I mean, it's different art. It's different art aesthetic of color. So
Yeah.
so what I always think is like about the references is that, okay, they're perfect, but they are a starting point.
Yeah.
Then let's start feeling the story. Let's start creating. Let's start like getting crazy. I like that. I like, for example, the editors got crazy when editing horror. You know, I did one time one movie and we spent more time conforming the movie than grading it, because the editor was doing like speed ramping, scaling, like different jump cuts, like really getting crazy. So in grading horror, I feel the same. It's like, let's get crazy. Let's get crazy. Let's start like feeling the story. You say like horror is, Mariam says, feel like feeling uncomfortable of something comfortable. So let's recreate that in post-production, even in editing, in sound. I love sound in horror.
It's a big part of horror movies, right?
I will say, I don't know, Mario, probably I will say is like the 50% of a movie.
Yeah, sound is very important, because you can effectively have someone see something without them even seeing it. And it's what we were saying before, where all the elements have to marry together. I will say, you know, as an additional note to this.
We'll go to Diego. And I think Diego had some surprise for us, because he wanted to emulate the look of Censor. That's another piece of movie that Mariam is really keen about to talk. And let me share my screen. Again, you can use Film Grab to do your research. And Censor is a piece of movie was When was it? When was it released, Mariam?
2021. That's it.
2021. Yeah, I obviously blind. I cannot see that.
So what's interesting about this film, though, the film itself was released in 2021, but it is inspired by the video nasties era in the UK in the 80s. And basically what happened then was there was a huge political movement that blamed horror films for crimes. Just like at some point, you know, comic books were blamed, and then more recently video games were blamed. Someone's always blamed for the crime. And in the 80s in the UK, it was horror films. So a lot of horror films were banned. They were put on a list. Ironically, some of these films weren't even horror films. They might have just had a word that they didn't like, and then they put it on the list, and the film was banned. A lot of films that are not banned anymore, or in some countries are only slowly being unbanned due to the bureaucratic process. And so what's interesting about this film, in which it's about a person who works for the censorship bureau and has to watch these films and censor them or choose whether they should not be released at all in the UK. Although the main frame of the film is a high glance independent concept, the movies that the protagonist is watching within the film are inspired by the 80s look. And I'm not talking about the colorful pop fashionable 80s that we know from, series and movies today, but the actual 80s where, different contrasts, different colors. And so this was the challenge that I put into this brief. How do you emulate that look and make it look like it's inspired by actual footage from the 80s, without going too retro, but also too fashionable. We're that independent sweet spot, and that was the brief on this one.
Wow, that is a really nice and interesting movie. I think after this I'll go watch Censor. And Diego, are you ready for this?
All right, let me actually share it. So it was actually, what is my screen? There you go, this one. Okay, now you should see my screen.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, it's really interesting what Mariam said, because I felt that it's a movie that has many ingredients. For example, one ingredient was the aspect ratio. I don't know if you saw it in the images. They have, for example, a 239 aspect ratio. In the other one, they have 4:3. It's really, I will say that it's not so contrastly, but it has always like two lights, like blue and magenta. And there are also some parts, for example, here, let me show it to you. Some parts when they create these, I will say, Technicolor images, beautiful, like film images from the past. But also they have some parts when they create this, like this almost happened to us in this broadcasting. Almost, we were close.
It happened when we went offline. The viewers just never saw it.
Yes. Yeah, but there are also like so many parts when they were like this, like a split light between this and this part. So in my case, I would say that I wasn't so technical as Max. I was more like feeling what I have to do and experimenting. So, and then like, okay, I have some references, as you saw it here, but then I was like, okay, let's do it some things. So the first thing was like, okay, I have these two lights, magenta and yellow. Do I have this magenta and yellow in this reference? No. Yeah, magenta and blue, I don't have it. No, I don't have it. So that was a problem.
Will it look natural if you add it?
No, it will not. But I will say to Mariam, sorry, I don't have the same photography. I cannot recreate the same. And that's something completely like worldly if you have to say it. For example, look at we have a lot of like lights, like normal light here, but we don't have this in the reference. So at that point, I was like, okay, let's play, let's play. And when I have like I told you before, when I'm in horror, I would like to be like the editor, like getting crazy. Let's put so many like plugins. Let's like broke the image, and suddenly we can find something nice. So for example, I found something nice here, like breaking the image. So for example, the original image is this one. And what I was doing, I will not say shit, like cheating in many of the things doing it, but I will like bypass all the notes and then show it to you what I did. So
but it almost feel like cheating, right?
Yeah, it will feel like cheating, yeah, for sure.
Just the feel, just the feel.
Just to feel. That's because I don't want any ghost to appear in the broadcast anymore.
Yeah. Please no. It's not fun.
It's not fun, yeah. Okay, so first I do bass. Then I was like, okay, horror has big vignettes. So let's do a vignette. Okay? Then let's do some noise. There is a lot of like film noise here. So in this case, I use the Renoiser from Magic Bullet that I found it really, really nice. And I actually exaggerated a lot. You feel the noise here. There is a lot of grain amount and so on. Then I was like, okay, let's do the crazy thing here. So the first thing, it was adding the look. So here I went to Mojo and I add something really desaturated. And then what I was doing is adding another note when I already forgot what I did here. Okay. Okay, it's the same, almost the same, like desaturating the images. Yes. And then here is where it comes like the crazy experiment. What happened here? So what happened here was something like, okay, it was like, okay, let's create something crazy. And the first thing that I did was come here to the effects and then starting with the Mojo. And I start like painting different things and pushing.
Yeah.
And then suddenly I found something interesting, for example, in this case. But what I like more of this is like all of the movie, the reference has a lot of magenta and green. All right. So here I found that I have some corrections that I can move magenta, look, and I can work. So what I was doing was experimenting here. Here I have the Mojo thing that will be like something here. But I was like creating. And I found the Mojo a really like great plugin for this. Like for, let's get crazy. Let's start moving and suddenly we can find something nice. For example, I did something really similar here in the sky. I say that, okay, let's create that magenta. We don't have the magenta, but let's create it. So I did it, in this case, just with the Mojo. Look, just saturated, and then I put the Mojo, and I was like playing with this. Look, I have some magenta, I have something like this, and then here's some noise. Yeah, so that was the main characteristic. Also, what I found really nice is like, okay, you see the aspect ratio. Here is 4:3, here is like 239, and this is something really interesting. And I can say that in this one, hey, what happened with this one? Okay, look, we have ghost. We have really ghost.
Yeah.
Now this one is, okay, we have this one.
Yes. No, it's affecting you as well.
Yeah, it's affecting me.
I mean, my connection is fine. I don't know what happened.
No, I found it. There you go. I don't have a connection here. Okay, there you go. I discovered the ghost. All right. So here I did almost something really, really similar. It's like, okay, the look, the Mojo is giving me like the spicy sauce. Yes, the Mojo is giving me like, okay, let's put the Mojo.
The way I like to see Mojo is like what Stu said. Stu Maswich, by the way, the creator of Mojo, is like, Mojo is like the MSG for your image. You know, it can elevate the image, but use it sparingly. But yeah, you know, it's always great to see how the plugin is used in a much different way than it was planned.
Yeah, and what I like it is that it was giving me that magenta. You know, at the beginning I wanted to do like some qualifiers, some Luma qualifiers, and put magenta in one side, and then another like Luma qualifier, and then put some green.
Yeah.
And suddenly I put the Mojo, and I was like, wow, I have it. I have it. Why I need to bother with some more nodes?
Yeah.
In Mojo, I have all the things.
So no more
look,
power windows and tracking.
At some point.
Yeah.
At some point. So I was like doing something like this, and I like it. For example, here in this part, this was like normal one, and I was like, okay, let's do something like, I don't know, something like the reference like here, kind of. But I was like also like wanted something more dark. I don't know. So what I was like doing, applying this one here, but also at the end, I was applying a little bit like correcting the images, something like that. There was also another one that I did that I liked a lot, is this one. So this one, we have something like this in the reference that is really beautiful. This is the typical, I don't know, Technicolor when everything was saturated, really nice. But the problem is that here I have many colors. In my image, I don't have many colors in my reference. I almost have like a monochrome and analog image. Yes. So what I was doing here is something a little bit more, less than crazy. So here, what I was doing here, go to the RGB mixer. And in the RGB mixer, let me show it to you. I was like, was like the base. It's not that actually a good base. I can improve it. But I was like actually messing with it when I did this. So here I was missing the channels. I was like going from here to here, and then like in some way like replacing the green with the yellow, mixing it, and then the green, let it as it was. So now I have something like this look. You see, that looks already, this is like a 2-strip Technicolor look. But then what I was doing here was like, okay, let's play a little bit and let's find something. Probably can be something like this, maybe more saturated. I'm actually right now with the color panel. As you notice, I'm not moving anything in my screen.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I like with the panel is that I'm actually looking right now at the screen and just enjoying it and try to feel it where I want it, like experimenting it. At some point you see, this is more like, let's feel the color. Let's feel the color and let's see how we want it. So was something like that, like the three kinds of like looks that I was doing. And finally, I don't know, I was experimenting like, okay, let's do something similar here. Let's start with the Mojo and so on, and let's do the same technique. One of the things that I like about working with, in this case with Magic Bullet, with Mojo, is like when you start like playing with this and take your time. At the beginning you will feel like, no, it's not working. But take some time enjoying it and discovering what they have it. And here I found this beautiful thing, the magenta. The magenta for me was like, what? This is absolutely helping me. This is like doing what I wanted at some point, that to have like this, like, I don't know, this kind of like two colors like war in some way. Mm-hmm. So, but then I was like saying, okay, the editors got crazy in editing. So let's get crazy in color. So I was doing something like that. So, you know, I was like, okay, let's cut the image. This is like the end of the movie. So let's cut the image and let's do something really uncomfortable. First, let's break the aspect ratio. And now it's break it. And then let's even break it more, the image. Let's put something, in this case, I put Alanor image, that is a OFX plugin. And I was like, okay, let's do something like that. And then let's mix even more the colors. I don't want something natural. And even I can come here and I can, like, I don't know, for example, here, I even can, I don't know, like animating things. Like let's do something even more comfortable, more uncomfortable. And for example, right now, even this can be a little bit less like one frame. I don't know, let's create that horror and just one frame, and then we'll be like, there you go. Now it's happening something.
Yeah.
All right. So it's because of that the editors got crazy. So why cannot we got crazy as colorists in grading horror? That will be like a perfect excuse for use all of that kind of plugins that you never use in comedies.
Yeah.
Okay, use it here. Use it here. Let's get crazy in horror. So that was mostly about it.
Very
It was
cool.
like playing with the aspect ratio, playing with Mojo, and also like do some things about horror. That is vignette, strong vignettes, desaturated color, and most of the horror movies have contrast. So I was like also playing with that. But yeah, I was also getting crazy, like, enjoying it.
That's
really,
cool, Diego.
thing
really
about it.
cool. Could
Thank you for
go
your insights,
on,
man.
Could you go on the house image again? Because I would, from the producer perspective, I'd like to comment on that as well. So, well, first of all, the format, the size and the graininess definitely immediately take you back to a different time, because you know that you only ever see that from, well, depending on your age, old home videos, cough cough, or from movies that show the 80s. What I think is quite interesting when you're trying to replicate the actual 80s look is that despite horror usually being very cool on the temperature scale, old 80s films are actually warm in their tone. And it's still creepy depending on how you do it. So if we look at the house and how you did it, it's not a completely cold house. It does have a sense of warmth to it, but it still is a scary looking house. And you were also talking about the contrast, and what's also very typical if you want it to look like a genuine 80s film is that there's actually, less of a contrast in the typical areas. So modern films, the blacks tend to be super black, and then everything else is super light. And if you look at films from the 80s, the technology was not able to capture that kind of black, that kind of darkness, that kind of contrast. And so when you want it to look like it's from the 80s, even if we look at this, for example, the blacks almost look like a grainy gray, which again gives it that super retro kind of feel. And then of course what you did when you experimented and had fun with it, that's perfect for horror because tapes, VHS tapes, which is what we're kind of replicating here. The data saved on a VHS cassette is not as layered and as adjustable as digital data. So what's creepy about a VHS cassette in a horror film is whatever happens on that tape, there's no explanation for, and there's something corrupt about the video. And so putting in like glitches like that, even if it's just a fraction of a second, you're right, it makes it uncomfortable. It's like, oh, did I just see something? Is this tape cursed? Why did it glitch like that? It's not supposed to glitch. So all those things that you were explaining, really captures that 80s feel. And if we were to take, for example, the house with what you did, that's that retro look versus the house that Max did, which is more in the 2000s. It's the same. And that's kind of why I picked these two briefs, because they're so different. The color grading is so opposite, and certain things you had to do the exact opposite of what the other person had to do. And it really comes to show how you can capture not just an emotion, but a time period depending on what you do. And I find it fascinating. The side by side as well, amazing. So Diego, fantastic work. Both of you, fantastic work. And as the producer, I am impressed.
You are fantastic, Mariam. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was fun. It was really fun. We enjoy it. That's cool. Really nice.
Yeah, that was really cool. Well, Mariam, thank you so much for willing to attend, willing to show up to
My
the show,
pleasure.
and we are really blessed to have you today. And you know, we even get the real horror sensations of a live show that is got disconnected.
You can't make this stuff up. This is just real life, you guys.
I know, right?
We just need
Doesn't get
to
better
add some
than
glitches.
this.
We just need to add some glitches, some black and white at that moment, and we'll be perfect.
Yeah. Well, let me share my screen. So yeah. Don't forget to check out what's happening next in Maxon community. You can go to maxon.net/events to check the events that will be running next. For example, tomorrow we'll have VFX and Chill with Hasi and Seth, and next Monday we'll have the Mystifying Post Productions, continuing from the exactly where you left off last Monday, still in sculpting. And next Thursday we'll also have As the Trainer with the focus on animations. And don't forget to get your free t-shirt. The link is in the chat. And if you want to enter the shop, you can use the code Spooky Sculpts, as you can see in your screen. And if you have spooky. And if you have any questions to me or to Diego, to Mariam, to anything related to the show or anything related to color grading, feel free to send your questions to maxoncolor@maxon.net. And by the way, Mariam, how do people find you?
Well, the best way to find me would be via Instagram, probably. My handle is @lady_Mariam_Michael. So yeah, just hit me up. As long as you're not sending me unsolicited photos, I am very open to a conversation. And let's talk horror. Are you a horror fan? What films do you like? Are you not a horror fan yet? Do you want some recommendations? Hit me up. I do chat with people, and I'm excited to meet you guys.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Or we can find you in the Ouija, playing Ouija or something like that. The
Where?
Ouija table.
The
Ouija
Ouija,
table.
the Ouija table. Yes, if you put the thing and like call for me, no matter where I am, I will respond to the Ouija board. If not, I will send a demon or a spirit to say, Mariam is not available right now. Please call again later.
Mariam is
Only for today. That was enough. Well,
Halloween is yet
awesome.
to come.
Exactly. Well, happy Halloween, everybody, and enjoy your Halloween celebrations. With that being said, my name is Max, and I'm your host today, and my co-host Diego, and our special guest today, Mariam. We wish you a happy Halloween, and see you again.
And Merry Christmas.
Not yet, Diego. And we'll see you in next 2 weeks' time in Maxon Color. So take care and have fun. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.